Hello and welcome to Maximum Dido, the first talking book about the artist. It was written and researched by Sally Wilford, music is by Amanda Thompson, and it is read by Gisela Madood. You can check out our full catalogue on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk.
And I love making music. I love writing songs. If I've got spare time, I'm going to spend it writing songs or producing or writing for other people or, I just love music.
Very rarely does an artist take the charts by storm on a global scale, while also managing to attain that elusive goal of critical acclaim. This one, however, has done both. With one outstandingly beautiful album to her name, she has provided the record-buying public with a repertoire of songs imbued with a stunning voice and a lyrical acuteness, a marriage not often witnessed on the popular music charts of contemporary times. Such a high quality of musical talent has thankfully received worldwide recognition, resulting in a multi-platinum selling album that continues to shift units by the truckload. Naturally, this level of achievement has been far from easy to attain, but after first tasting recognition for her musical abilities as a backup vocalist for her elder brother's band, it was a desire that became firmly lodged in this female's heart. A classically trained singer, this London-born artist became determined to contribute her own unique brand of soulful and electronic music to the rich fabric that is the sound of today's pop culture. Combining the effects of scratching from live decks and melodic acoustic guitar riffs with her lush vocals, the resulting songs have lodged themselves firmly in the consciousness of true music lovers everywhere. Her older brother Rollo, the founding father of Cheeky Records and the million-selling trip-hop band Faithless, has provided invaluable aid in the pursuance of such a dream. His little sister and the creator of this all-pervasive hypnotic music is British singer Dido Armstrong, a remarkably talented individual with a delicate, mellow voice, echoing that of a hybrid between Enya, Beth Orton and Sarah McLachlan, who has managed to create an innovative album that is not only new and classic at the same time, but also hugely accessible and incredibly successful. The name of that album is No Angel, and amazingly it is Dido's first. After hearing her story though, one thing becomes very clear. It certainly won't be her last.
Dido, she was an African queen in Latin literature. She was a sort of warrior queen who actually ended up killing herself over a guy.
In a London hospital on Christmas Eve in 1971, a husband and wife couple was seriously beginning to doubt whether Christmas would ever be the same again in their household. The contractions had begun during the night of December the 24th, and a little over 24 painful hours later, a small screaming bundle was placed in the arms of its mother. Another baby had at last decided to enter the world, and so the Armstrong family was completed. Mother Claire, Father William, and elder brother Roland could not have been happier. Quite literally, on Christmas Day of that year, a star was born. Born to a homemaker mother and a literary agent father, the new arrival possessed a strength of character and fervour so formidable that her parents could think only of one name for her, that of one of Latin literature's strongest female characters, the great warrior queen of Carthage, and so Dido practically named herself. A strong name for a strong-willed little girl, with a zest for life so enormous that anything she put her mind to, she succeeded in. Little wonder with the environment in which she was nurtured and cared for. With her elder brother Roland, this young girl of English-Irish descent spent her formative years growing up in the comfortable surroundings of a small house in Islington. Whilst her father went out to work, her mother endeavoured to turn their home into a haven where creativity and art would flourish. As Dido and her brother, now forever christened as Rollo, witnessed their mum scribbling down numerous poems that she had composed each week, they too began to catch the bug to create. Denied access to a television, they had little choice but to produce their own entertainment, and they started to display a flair and talent for imaginative pursuits. Even if one episode did involve Rollo pushing his little sister down a flight of stairs and then putting itching powder in her bed just to amuse himself, the siblings grew close, and many of their activities were more productively creative. Dido showed innovation when it came to occupying her time and began hungering for different kinds of ways to pass the hours. As she turned 5, she started to experience the initial stirrings of a passion to play a musical instrument, but much to her annoyance, her parents were not keen to buy her one. Fate stepped in, however, and one day she noticed a small brown and cream plastic tube in the lost and found at school. She couldn't believe her luck. It was a recorder, which no one appeared to be claiming, and her yearning to own a musical instrument got the better of her. She took it. From that moment on, Dido was 100% addicted to creating and playing music. Every day she would rush home from school and wait for her parents to busy themselves somewhere else so she could play it in secret. And play it she did. From the age of 5, she would practice for hours at a time, getting carried away by the Bach concertos that her fingers and breath were creating. Eventually, her mother caught her, but upon witnessing her phenomenal ability, was not only amazed, but now also extremely supportive of her young daughter's chosen path. And so it was. In 1978, Dido Armstrong and someone else's abandoned recorder were accepted into the Guildhall School of Music in London. Claire and William's little girl could not have been happier, and as the years passed, her musical capabilities continued to strengthen and flourish. By the time she celebrated her 10th birthday, she was declared a child prodigy, having not only superbly mastered the recorder, but also the piano and violin. 1985 was to be a very special year for her. She had managed to be accepted into a classical music ensemble that toured up and down the country, but more importantly, she also found herself attending an audition for a student opera at Westminster Abbey. And it was there that she finally discovered her beautiful vocal abilities. Realising that she possessed an even more powerful musical instrument in her lungs prompted her to join the Abbey's choir, and she continued to sing there for the next few years. She was also in the midst of discovering something else though, and that something was boys. Dido had finally hit the teenage years, and with it arrived the endless fascination with clothes, makeup, and the opposite sex. She still continued to tour with the classical ensemble up until she turned 19, but this type of music was no longer the number one priority in her life. Along with boys, she had fallen in love with the smoky jazz vocals of Ella Fitzgerald, as well as more contemporary, modern and distinctive sounds of bands such as The Police. By the time she finished school in 1991, this teenager had a very clear idea of what she wanted to do, and as previously, put all her effort into trying to achieve it. Wanting initially to follow in her father's footsteps on leaving school and having invested an awful lot of hard work, she was eventually admitted entry into the world of words through employment as a literary agent. Such a routine existence, though, was not nearly enough to sate this girl's lust for life. And so, while she spent her daylight hours alternating between greasing the wheels of the publishing world and studying at law school, during the night time she could be seen assuming an altogether very different guise, singing self-penned songs with a band backing her on stage. She had taken that first step on the ladder to making pop music.
I just decided to write about things that were important to me because I knew I was going to have to sing them for a few years. So I don't want to write about things that I'm not interested in or don't feel passionate about, because then I've got to sing it every night and not feel it.
Whilst his younger sister had been adding as many strings to her bow as possible, singing, working as a literary agent, learning to play musical instruments to name just a few, Roland Rollo Armstrong was also trying to find his niche. Experiences such as swimming the Ganges, winning the North Yorkshire heats of the Disco Dancing Championship, working as a barman in Sydney and as a gardener for Islington Council, had done little to help him decide which career path to pursue. At a loss as to which direction he wanted his life to head in, he took the plunge and enrolled at university. 3 years later, he left with an honours degree in philosophy tucked under his belt, but still feeling unsatisfied. Then one day in 1991, whilst Dido was storming the publishing world in between touring the club circuit, he found his calling. As he lazed in his bedroom chatting to two of his friends, Francis Wright and Red Jerry, the three of them decided to mess around on his mini recording studio. The result was a dance track called Don't You Want Me, and in January 1992, under the artist's name Felix, it managed to sell 2.2 million copies. Rollo had found where both his talent and passion lay, and just like his sister, it was within the arena of music. As the years rolled by, the two siblings pursued their respective career paths. Dido became a very successful literary agent, and Rollo continued to mix and produce tracks. Both were going from strength to strength, Dido earning a very comfortable salary due to her considerable abilities in her chosen field, whilst Rollo, being equally confident and driven in his, formed his own record label with Mel Medley. And so in 1994, Cheeky Records was born. The Armstrong siblings and their careers couldn't have been more different, but unbeknown to them, their respective worlds were about to collide. By the following year, both had reached a turning point in their lives. Rollo had become phenomenally successful as a writer, producer and remixer for bands such as the Pet Shop Boys, M People, Simply Red and Living Joy. But he also found himself desperately wanting to try something new. An opportunity quickly presented itself when he found a group of people with whom he felt he could collaborate on a long-term project, an altogether new experience for him. And so he formed his own band and immediately began co-writing and co-producing with Jamie Cato, Sister Bliss and Maxi Jazz, under the moniker of Faithless. At the same time, a certain Dido Armstrong had also reached a watershed point in her young life. She had met and fallen in love with a new boyfriend called Bob Page, and that had made her stand still and seriously take stock of where she was heading. Such reflection resulted in her contemplating quitting her job in publishing because she could no longer ignore where her true passion lay. What she really wanted to do was record an album of the songs that she had been writing since 19 years of age. She was therefore faced with a dilemma. She knew her brother's new project Faithless would be the ideal place to start pursuing her dream, but at the time she felt too afraid to ask Rollo for her big break. She was left with only one option. Whilst Faithless worked on their first album, she hung around the studio and loitered in between making cups of tea. Every day she entered that studio with hope in her heart that it would prove to be the day that she might be asked to contribute her vocals to a song. And one day, her persistence paid off. Rollo did come to realise, whilst laying down one particular track, that they were indeed lacking in a backup vocalist, and Sister Bliss recommended that they get Dido to contribute, to which he allegedly replied, "My sister can't sing." Wrong, Rollo. Upon hearing her lovely voice properly for the first time, he became aware of just how misguided he'd been. The deal she'd wanted for so long was sealed at last. Dido Armstrong was signed to her brother's record label, Cheeky, and was now an official member of the trip-hop outfit Faithless. However, Rollo, ever the teasing older sibling, continued to take the view that she shouldn't give up her day job. The band had become everyone's day job though, and by September 1995, Faithless had released their first single, Salva Mea. It was moderately successful but did little to prepare them for the events of the summer of the following year. It was then that their second offering, entitled Insomnia, was released, and that they had the first bona fide smash hit on their hands. A track that not only became an international clubbing anthem, but also a top 10 hit worldwide. Dido had entered the year of 1996 as a mere 24-year-old, but would see it out feeling a lot older and wiser. Within those 12 months, Faithless's debut album, Reverence, was mixed and released, and it was a record to which she had contributed both backing vocals and lead part from Flowerstand Man, a track she had co-written with her brother. Her life had become a whirlwind roller coaster of both extremely uplifting and soul-destroying experiences. She'd achieved the amazing feat of collaborating on an album that would eventually go on to sell a staggering 5 million copies, but at the same time had paradoxically secured a misery and loneliness that would envelop her for the next 18 months. 18 months which would see her, her brother, and the rest of the band touring the world, and therefore keeping her away from the newfound love of her life, Bob Page. Such a separation, though, would prove to be the ultimate blessing in disguise, as it was during those times when she felt like the aching and longing would consume her completely that she began to work on her own solo material. One such recording session yielded a song called I'm No Angel, and on the strength of that alone, she was going to do something she'd never done before. She was going to ignore her brother's advice. She was definitely going to give up her day job.
I mean, I worked in publishing for years, and then in the last year of that I was doing law school, but at night. I never finished it because I'm doing this, so I think they still think I'm coming back.
And so every time Dido returned to London, she laid down tracks for her first demo tape. By the time 1997 had begun, the 25-year-old pop chanteuse had managed to assemble an album's worth of demo tapes. Such an achievement gave her a much-needed confidence boost, and she was in 100% agreement when her brother suggested that they approach some key record labels in the industry with her solo material. As it turned out, they didn't have to approach very many at all. It so happened that Clive Davis, the infamous president of the American branch of Arista Records, was in London. He had discovered and signed superstars such as Santana, Sarah McLachlan, Janis Joplin and Whitney Houston, and now, after having got hold of Dido's demo tape, was eager to make contact with her. And so, in early 1997, a nervous young woman entered the Dorchester Hotel in London for a meeting with a music industry legend. She certainly didn't need to be worried, though. Upon hearing her sing a couple of her self-penned songs, he signed her on the spot, and Dido Armstrong became the first direct signing to Arista USA in over 10 years. Everything in her life was now focused solely on preparing for and completing her first album. She was already living with her brother, and so when he offered to help produce and mix the album with his partner Youth, it seemed the perfect setup. A few months later, though, she made another important decision. Rollo could handle the mixing of the album, but she wanted to produce her debut herself. Naturally, he agreed, and for the whole duration of the summer, they all entered the studio and began to record her new solo material. It was a process that would take nearly 2 years to complete. In the meantime, though, it became apparent that while securing a record deal had been pretty plain sailing compared to how some artists struggle, getting the album out to the public was another matter entirely. The lush vocals of Dido, married to ethereal acoustics and electronic dots and loops, was a kind of music unique to itself, and Arista were unclear as to how to promote and publicise their newfound gem. The Highbury Fields EP provided the answer. Distributed as a promotional item, it managed to drum up an underground following for this female artist. Dido was producing a buzz at college radios across the entire length and breadth of America. As 1998 commenced, such good news was doing little to raise Dido's spirits. Her boyfriend Bob was away from her, but as always, she tried to channel the associated negative emotions into creativity, and by the end of January had managed to compose 3 new songs for the album, entitled All You Want, Don't Think of Me and Hunter. This female artist was anything but lazy, and in addition to working on her own album, was also busying herself with Faithless's new release, Sunday 8 p.m, contributing 2 tracks entitled Postcards and Hem of His Garment. She was clearly eager to gain as much exposure for her music as possible, and so the next offer she received was simply too irresistible to refuse. Upon being asked if she'd like to contribute one of her songs, Thank You, to the soundtrack of an up-and-coming low-budget British film, she had no problem saying yes. It was a decision that, although she didn't know it at the time, would drastically alter the course of her life. The movie she was contributing to, called Sliding Doors, was to feature the famous Hollywood actress Gwyneth Paltrow, and therefore would inevitably be popular, thus boosting the profile of Dido and her music amongst cinema-goers. More importantly though, it just happened to gain her and her song recognition from a very significant person indeed. That man was Marshall Mathers, also known as Eminem. Things were about to get even more hectic in the world of Dido Armstrong.
Some songs actually just come the whole thing. I mean, you're actually writing the music while the words are coming out, but that's sort of rare.
Although the amount of money spent on an artist by its record label is by no way indicative of the quality of the music, the fact that Arista invested about $500,000 in Dido's first video more than adequately demonstrated their faith and belief in her talent and musical capabilities. Such was their confidence in her future success that they drafted in Academy, the team responsible for groundbreaking music videos from George Michael, Mary J. Blige and Lauryn Hill, to work on Dido's. And so in early 1999, she released her first solo single, the haunting and delicate ode to love, Here With Me, and its accompanying glossy video. The latter promotional tool eventually began to be screened regularly on television music channels, MTV2 and The Box, but much to Arista and Dido's dismay, it never broke into the mainstream. More popular channels such as VH1 or MTV were proving very reluctant to include it in their schedules. In addition, radio play of the single ranged from infrequent to non-existent, and unfortunately, everyone had to face the truth. The worst case scenario had actually transpired. Both the video and debut single by Dido Armstrong had bombed. Now this is where the careers of many a music artist have ended, but no one was ready to give up on the gorgeous and melancholic music that this woman produced quite yet. There had to be some way of making the masses aware of such talent, so Arista went back to the drawing board. If an artist can't get radio play in America, then there is very little chance of the public ever discovering their music, or that artist attaining any degree of commercial success. Dido had been denied national exposure on radio, and therefore only one way remained for the public to get to listen to her songs, and that was for them to witness it firsthand. So in May of that year, Arista initiated an ambitious marketing plan that started with Dido embarking on a promotional tour of the USA for the duration of the month before her debut album was released. Such a tour, whilst often requiring her to play to as little as 20 to 40 people at in-store appearances and small venues, managed to expand even more the underground following created as a result of the Highbury Fields EP. Some sort of solid fan base was appearing at last. The day of reckoning had arrived though, and on June 1st, 1999, Dido's debut album, No Angel, was finally released. Much to everyone's relief, it was a record that received rave reviews wherever it was mentioned. The critics were unanimous in their opinions and comments. Dido Armstrong's debut release was a masterpiece. 12 tracks knitted together and unified by sweeping orchestral arrangements, gorgeous acoustic guitars and vocal harmonies, possessing a unique fragility. This artist had broken new barriers in managing to release an album containing songs with catchy sing-along choruses, beautiful melodies, and a warm, full-bodied sound mixing both traditional and electronic instruments. In their eyes, she could do no wrong, but unfortunately, while she may have received huge amounts of critical appreciation, attention from the record-buying public failed to materialise. Several developments would transpire, though, to save Dido from musical oblivion. Firstly, in July, months after its release, Here With Me was chosen as the much-beloved theme song for the teen cult series Roswell. Although it took some time for people to discover whom the mysterious singer was, such exposure went a long way in getting Dido out to the public. Secondly, during the last week of that month, she performed on the prestigious Lilith Fair Outdoor Festival Tour, gigs which guaranteed her playing to large audiences and sharing her music with a larger live audience than ever before. At last she'd got her break. Such national exposure meant that by July 28th, Here With Me had finally moved into the top 40 of the radio playlist. Dido was clearly on her way, and she hastily began laying the groundwork for a major headlining tour of North America. When August came, she played her first show in Vancouver, Canada, and the tour wound up in Boston at the beginning of October. But this female artist had absolutely no intention of putting the brakes on the momentum that she had finally gathered, and therefore spent the last month before the new millennium performing another mini tour. Her resulting television appearance on The Late Show with David Letterman truly signalled that Dido was going places. The year 2000 continued to echo that sentiment, and in February she kicked off another tour in New York and released Don't Think of Me as the new single. And more good news was on the way. Finally, after more than 10 months on the radio album chart, No Angel was at the number 4 spot. After a performance on the Conan O'Brien show, Dido finished the tour in March in a blaze of glory, but nothing could prepare her for what the month of May had to offer.
I love doing it with with Eminem, and it was lovely that people got an introduction to my music through that as well.
Some months previously, she'd been sent a track for approval, which had sampled her sweet light tune Thank You into a dark tale about an obsessive fan who sends a degenerative series of unanswered letters to his idol. She had given the go-ahead to the artist to use part of her song, and the album which it was featured on was to be released that month. The album was called the Marshall Mathers LP, the track entitled Stan, and it was by the world's best-selling rap artist, Eminem. And so in May of 2000, Dido's sweet and dulcet tones could be heard on an album other than her own. This other album, however, just happened to debut at number 1 on the Billboard album chart and also generate the second biggest first week sales figures in the history of the record business. In addition, the combination of Eminem's raw lyrics and Dido's poignant and sincere emotion was hailed by many of the critics as the highlight of the album. She had at last been given her big break. No Angel virtually vanished from the charts for about a year, but the same week that Eminem's new release debuted, it finally made a welcome comeback on the Billboard Top 200 chart at number 144. Finally, her music was catching the attention of the mainstream record-buying public. Encouraged by such support, she hit the road once again with a tour that began in Albany and would finish a couple of months later in Las Vegas on July the 15th. In the meantime, though, she maintained a high profile in the public's consciousness. Sarah Brightman, the British opera singer and ex-wife of the hugely successful composer Andrew Lloyd Webber, released a cover version of Here With Me, whilst the band Dusted, consisting of Dido's brother Rollo and his friend Mark Bates under a pseudonym, released their debut album, While We Were Young, upon which she had co-written 3 of the tracks. Always Remember to Respect and Honour Your Mother Part 1, The Biggest Fool in the World, and Winter. This female musician had no intention whatsoever of standing still for even 1 minute, and so as the month of August started, she was already back on the road. This time it was a little different though. She was embarking on her own headlining tour. Such a fierce commitment to performing in public was finally paying off. No Angel had broken into the top 100 of the Billboard chart, and on the back of such an achievement, a new version of the single Here With Me was released, and Arista were more than happy to fund a new video to accompany it. Nothing was too much trouble for their up-and-coming new star of the music world. By the time September arrived, it was already receiving heavy rotation on MTV2. But there was an even more exciting prospect waiting for Dido. Eminem was releasing Stan as the next single off his album, and he was hoping that she would accept his invitation to appear in the video alongside him. She didn't hesitate in saying yes, and within a matter of weeks, the footage was shot and the promo distributed for viewing. The last 3 months of the new millennium year also proved to be a whirlwind of activity and excitement for Dido Armstrong. In October, it was announced that some of the tracks off her debut album would be featured on 2 CDs to be released at Christmas, whilst in addition there would be a new DVD single released. Furthermore, the song Here With Me was being featured on the soundtrack to another Gwyneth Paltrow movie called Bounce, in which she co-starred with Ben Affleck. By November, there seemed to be no stopping Dido. Not only had her album finally been released in Europe, but she'd also made a show-stopping appearance with Eminem on Saturday Night Live, where they performed the duet of Stan. It appeared life couldn't get any better, but the next few weeks would prove that observation very wrong. December was to bring the ultimate Christmas present, in fact. As her brother celebrated his record label Cheeky being sold to BMG Records for a very large sum of money indeed, Dido toasted her own most recent phenomenal achievement. On Christmas Day, as she raised her glass to celebrate her 29th birthday, she had received her best combined birthday and Christmas present ever. Stan, the single she had collaborated with Eminem on, was the Christmas #1 single in England.
It's not so much that it didn't take off, it certainly didn't sort of jump off, but it's been very, I mean, you know, when I look back at the sales of it, it's like I've just plodded up. It's never gone down, it's just started very low and now it's sort of high.
Dido's decision to allow Eminem to sample a portion of one of her songs had finally given her the boost that she so desperately needed. The problem had never been the music. All along that had been well crafted and accessible, but how to mobilise it and distribute it to allow access so that as many of the record buying public as possible could hear it. That had proven a lot more tricky, not least because of the difficulty in pigeonholing Dido's music into one particular style or genre. Initially a classically trained singer, such as her, appearing on a track produced by the rap legend Dr. Dre, had seemed ludicrous, but as it turned out, it was actually the contribution of her distinctive voice and lyrics that had made the song so effective. The surprisingly thoughtful exchange between Eminem and the psychotic fan worked so well, because the looped sample from Thank You soared above the spoken words. It was in fact her vocals that had given the song the edge it needed and what had truly ensured its phenomenal popularity all over the world. After debuting in the top 5 of the singles charts in several countries, Stan had turned out to be so much more than a runaway success. It had finally opened the door for this musician from Islington and provided her with instant exposure to a huge audience. Furthermore, Eminem's insistence that she join him on stage for a few of the concerts on his anger management tour also allowed fans of a different genre of music entirely to experience a taste of her material live. Her fan base truly was expanding at an incredible rate. And so, as January 2001 began, it appeared Dido Armstrong was conquering new heights and expanding her horizons, as already 4 days into the new year, she received the wonderful news that No Angel was number 17 on the Billboard Top 200 album chart. Furthermore, riding on the back of the success of her collaboration with Eminem, Thank You had debuted at number 80 on the Top 100 singles chart. It was even chosen to be featured in the background of a love scene involving the Hollywood star Sharon Stone on the extremely popular primetime American television series If These Walls Could Talk. The interest which this 29-year-old female from London was generating in the US was huge, and as her debut album finally broke into the top 10 of the Billboard chart when it moved from 17 to number 9 on the 11th of January, a very important announcement was made by her record label, Arista. At last, her popularity had spread to outside the United States. and so the moment that she had been waiting for had finally arrived. Her album No Angel, already storming the charts in the rest of Europe, was finally to be released in her native country, England. In addition, she was generating a huge fan base at such an alarming rate that it was also announced that she would be embarking on a European tour later in the year. Performing live had always been what she loved doing best, but it also gave her that rare opportunity to give something back to her long-standing European fans for their unwavering loyalty and support. However, she was also now eager to find a different method of showing her appreciation, something that little bit different and extra special. And so, at her instigation, BMG began to get in contact with the individual creators of the multitude of websites dedicated to discussing her and her music that had suddenly sprung up within the internet community over the last few months. It was decided that every couple of weeks, Jared Villig of the record label's marketing department would email these websites with exclusive news about developments within the Dido camp, and also send the webmasters promotional CDs and autographed merchandise to give to the fans as competition prizes. Such a move not only gave lovers of her music a taste of things to come, but also truly demonstrated just how much Dido wanted to acknowledge their support and faith in her work. It was her way of giving back just a little to the people who had got her to where she was today. By mid-January, her music had made such a strong impact on the record-buying public that her debut album was climbing the UK charts and had reached number 11, a great feat in itself, but even more remarkable because it had broken the top 20 before she had even released her first commercial single there. Encouraged by such an amazing achievement, it was decided that more dates should be added to the UK leg of the tour, and that the video to her recent US single, Thank You, should be released. Naturally, it quickly received heavy rotation on both the music channels VH1 and MTV all over the world, but its real significance lay in the fact that it truly symbolised just how famous Dido and her music had become. So famous, in fact, that her album No Angel had just been certified platinum. January ended in the way it had begun. Dido was still conquering the heights of international stardom, with an album at number 8 on the Billboard charts, a single at number 47 on the Top 100 single charts, and a music video that was in the top 10 of both the MTV and VH1 promo charts. Nothing, though, prepared her for the buzz that she felt at the beginning of the following month. After hitting it big in the States as a result of her duet with Eminem, she had come home to conquer her own country in the flesh, and conquer it she did. On February the 7th, accompanied by the New York-based band that she had now been touring with for 2 years, she performed her first ever London gig at the Scala. The concert just happened to have been sold out for weeks. She then continued her victorious crusade through England a few days later, when she made another appearance at a sold-out venue, but this time it had nothing whatsoever to do with her own tour. At a London arena show, thousands of fans at an Eminem gig were surprised and delighted as he brought Dido onto the stage to perform their number 1 international smash hit, Stan. There was only one way to finish such a fantastic month. The time had come for Dido Armstrong to release her first single, Here With Me, in her native country.
You know, to be honest, the whole live thing, it's not like I've been touring for 10 years of my life. You know, I've really been touring. I toured with Faithless, but that was so different from now. I've really been touring on my own for 1.5 years, which is really not that long in terms of a career.
This former Faithless vocalist had deemed this particular point in her life as the perfect opportunity to show her fellow countrymen and women exactly what she was made of. Releasing Here With Me seemed the best way to achieve it, being one of the most beautiful and accessible tracks off the album. With a lilting lullaby chorus, huge massive attack-esque strings, chunky dance beats, and touching lyrics about the heartache of missing a loved one, it is Dido at her best. It had already wafted around within the consciousness of the British public due to the popular US television series Roswell, which had chosen it as its theme tune, beginning its first season in the UK some months earlier under the altered name of Roswell High. Within a few weeks of its airing, the BBC television channel had been flooded with inquiries from viewers as to who sang the theme song and how they could get hold of it. Well, Dido was about to provide the answers to both of these questions. The single was finally available to the British record buyer on the 12th of February 2001. Dido Armstrong and her melodic, fragile music was everywhere, even to the point that Sir Elton John sang the sampled parts of her single Thank You when he shared the stage with Eminem for a performance of Stan during the Grammy Awards at the end of February. The next 2 months would prove to be even more incredible, as the simple word Dido would become a household name in all 4 corners of the globe. As March began, Dido, her record company and her fans were delighted to learn that No Angel had maintained its number 2 position on the Billboard charts for a second week, and that the single Thank You was now at number 20. While she was blazing a trail of glory all over America though, it also became clear that other countries had taken her straight to their hearts as well as their CD collections. Here With Me had managed to shift an excess of 600,000 units in the UK. Her album was number 2 in Germany, and in New Zealand, not only was No Angel topping the charts with a platinum certification after more than 15,000 copies having been sold, but Thank You was the most played song on the radio. The best news was yet to come though. On the 13th of March 2001, Dido Armstrong's ultimate dream came true. Her debut album climbed to the number 1 position on the UK album charts. In addition, she was informed that it had now sold over 3 million copies in the US, and as a result had been certified 3 times platinum. Her single Thank You had also topped the charts there. In Australia too, her musical popularity was still continuing to soar, and incredibly, she managed to repeat the same achievement she'd scored in the UK in January of that year. No Angel had climbed to the top position without the benefit of the release of a single. This female artist had every reason to just relax and bask in the glow of such an amazing success story. But as always, Dido was keen to get back to what she loved doing best, making music. After an invitation from her elder brother, Rollo, she returned to the studio to help record some tracks for Faithless's soon-to-be-released new album, Outrospective. Although visually out of the public arena, audibly she was far from it. Her album was firmly placed within the top 5 on the UK charts, whilst it was revealed that the track My Life was to be featured in the new Jennifer Lopez movie, Angel Eyes. Her record company made an even more important announcement though, when they publicised that Dido would be taking her music on the road in the not-too-distant future, and that Travis, the musicians behind the multi-platinum selling album The Man Who, would be supporting her. The month of March may have ended with Rollo's baby sister being firmly ensconced in a recording studio, but it also ended with her happily occupying the number 6 position on the American charts with Thank You. The next few weeks proved to be just as exciting as even more reasons to celebrate materialised. Firstly, an online report by the BBC revealed that No Angel had sold 3 million units in America and in excess of 700,000 albums in the UK. Furthermore, her single Here With Me had managed to remain in the British charts for the 7th week running. Everything was unbelievable in the world of Dido Armstrong, but who could have predicted that they would become even more so?
Basically just about meeting someone and how you feel the morning after. It's just that feeling of, I don't want to move anything, I don't want to change anything, I don't want to do anything, I just want to remember that one night.
6 years earlier at a nightclub, Dido's boyfriend of the time had introduced her to the most amazing man she had ever met. He was a lawyer and his name was Robert Page. The impact he made on her was so huge that the next day she felt compelled to compose a new song, and that song just happened to be the beautiful ballad Here With Me. Well, in April of 2001, he got down on one knee and proposed marriage to his multi-platinum album-selling British girlfriend. Dido Armstrong, unsurprisingly, immediately, wholeheartedly and happily accepted. Bob and her had become officially engaged. As fate would have it, though, the celebrations were short-lived, as the very next day, she and her suitcase travelled away for the foreseeable future. It was time for the public to witness her musical talent and capabilities firsthand again. And so, on the 6th of April, she kicked off her international tour at the Glasgow Barrowlands. It was a tour that would keep her on the road for just over 3 months, as she performed to sell-out audiences in Germany, France, Spain, Sweden, Belgium, Canada, and North America. However, during those 3 months, she not only dominated the gig circuits of Europe and America, but she also continued to command a huge share of the world's radio airwaves, music charts, and television channels. It was revealed that she had written 2 songs for US pop sensation Britney Spears, and that she was going to team up with the 19-year-old to help produce several tracks, as well as pen new material for her forthcoming album. Dido's own solo work, though, was still making huge waves within the music industry on a global scale. By mid-April, Here With Me was number 19 on the German charts, and number 33 in the UK charts, whilst Thank You had climbed to number 4 in the US. More excitingly, though, No Angel, still having a firm grip within the top 5 of the UK charts, paid testament to the fact that its popularity was still continuing to grow. Because it showed no signs of stopping flying out of the music stores, it was decided that Dido's phenomenally successful debut album would be released in Japan. Such a decision seemed very wise, as by the end of April, the very same record was inhabiting the top 10 of the charts in the US, the UK, Germany and Australia. In the first week of May 2001, Dido was playing to sell-out crowds in Stockholm, Oslo, Copenhagen, Hamburg and Brussels. Her pace of life was hectic to say the least, but the zest and sheer enthusiasm that she displayed as a young child when she had religiously practiced the recorder every day after school was still very much in evidence. In between a grueling and exhausting tour schedule, she still managed to find the time to do interviews and photo shoots, appearing most prestigiously on the cover of the best-selling American music magazine Rolling Stone, with a gigging support act Travis. She also guested on the song One Step Too Far, a track featured in the newly released Faithless album, Outrospective. Much to her delight, she was also receiving praise in the media for not only her music, but also her decision to allow her song Take My Hand to be featured in the background for the controversial kiss between Jack and Toby during an episode of the hugely popular teen series Dawson's Creek. Both the gay and straight communities applauded such a move, as she had used her music to promote and stress the importance of tolerance towards sexual differences amongst the teenage population. In addition, along with the pop band Hearsay, she was commended by the British music industry for being responsible for substantially boosting the value of British record sales in the first financial quarter of 2001. Such a boost had pushed the sale of CD albums over the £1 billion mark for the first time ever. The fact that on the day the BMI announced this, Dido's album No Angel was enjoying its 31st week on the UK charts seemed to further substantiate their claims. The album was not only number 3 on the UK album charts, selling by that time over 8 million copies worldwide, but her new single Thank You had also taken the single charts by storm and entered them at number 3. By the beginning of June, Dido was celebrating the fact that No Angel had sold nearly 3 million copies in the US by taking her sell-out headlining tour to audiences all over Canada and North America. She was riding the wave of international success and worldwide recognition, and upon finishing her tour on July the 8th, one of her wildest fantasies was to come true. She was to be the opening act for one of her childhood music idols. Sting wanted Dido Armstrong to support him for his 2 sellout gigs in Los Angeles, and such an event, more than any, illustrated to her just how much she had accomplished. She had certainly come a long way from being that starry-eyed teenager who used to worship the posters of him tacked to her bedroom walls. She was actually going to perform alongside him at his invitation. No, life didn't get any better than this.
I love London. It just suits me so well. You know, all my friends are in London, and you know, all my sort of musical sort of influences and friends and musicians are all in London. I mean, my band here are American, well, mostly American.
Dreamy pop is one way to describe Dido's music, or electronica shadings married to folk guitars and soulful vocals that, when blended together, despite the denial in the title of her debut album, produces a kind of music that is 100% heavenly. Peppered with songs that are both sweet and soothing and anchored by formidable hypnotic beats, these are tunes that will never float away. Throughout her childhood in London, this female artist was always singing, humming, and playing around on her recorder for as long as she could remember. Her classical training has provided a musical grounding which appears to lend her songs a weight, an indefinable logic that sounds just right. Maybe it's her English-Irish heritage that enables her to make music with such a tight hold on the past, and yet combined with a feel that is so completely contemporary it can't be readily placed and is equally difficult to define. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear: her music stays with you like a dream that you can't shake off. Her gorgeous, melancholic, lilting voice and extraordinary, flowing, witty and charming lyrics have made a huge impact on anyone who has had the pleasure of hearing them. Such an accomplishment has resulted in her not only bewitching the critics, but also the public, and her music still continues to take the charts by storm all over the world. This lady, through her talent, sheer determination and unwavering commitment to succeeding, has even managed to permeate the musical consciousness of America, an achievement attained by very few British music artists during their creative lifetime. Naturally enough, it has been a success that she has managed to repeat domestically, and upon hearing her songs, the UK were just as quick to take her and her music to their hearts. Such international domination can mean one thing alone. Clearly, this is a career that can only continue to go one way, and that way is up. It is truly ironic, then, that it was her own elder brother, Roland Rollo Armstrong, that tried to dissuade her from pursuing a music career. It is to the record-buying public's benefit, though, that she chose to ignore him and instead share the sweet simplicity of her melodies and the complexity of her words with audiences all over the world. Such a decision has ensured that in Dido Armstrong, the music industry has one of its brightest stars. It is a star that will continue to sparkle with promise for a very long time to come. Of that we can be sure.
Thank you for buying Maximum Dido. We hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for further titles on Chrome Dreams coming up soon. If you did enjoy it or have any comments or suggestions, write to us at Chrome Dreams, PO Box 230, New Malden, Surrey, UK, KT3 6YY, or email on mail@chromedreams.co.uk. Details of our full catalogue are listed on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk. Thanks again for listening and goodbye for now.